I just want to raise a number of issues with you, Mr. Moran, in relation to departments and collecting of taxes and so on, how they engage with the public, because you refer in your different publications the need to be transparent and encourage the public to have a better understanding of how departments work. But I received this email from a business person that I know, and they raised an issue. And since raising the issue relative to the proper management by a department of the location that the man is based in, he said that since then they have put the knife in at every opportunity, that they take a personal interest in us because of the matters we raised. They're ignoring emails from him to the relevant section. And an individual on that site said that she was terrorised. They terrorised her by saying she would be prosecuted if she didn't take appropriate action. And they were vindictive at a cost to the taxpayer. Now, that's reality of how somebody thinks of the department and administration in terms of governance. Separate to that, I want to refer you to, I know it's a court case from some years ago, but where a citizen of the state was taken to court by a department, and eventually the judge actually stood down the jury and declared that the department did not put forward a credible case, and had some extremely harsh words for the department concerned. And that was the use of taxpayers' money to beat down an individual. And in spite of winning the case and walking away with his integrity intact, he still hasn't been paid for the loss he had in terms of his business, which the department had a hand in. And I come across those cases. I'm not the only one that people would write to. And these are cases that have been taken up over the years and still remain unresolved. And what concerns me is the use of taxpayers' money in the beating up of the citizen, and then the stonewalling to see just how far the individual will go to have his rights acknowledged. And what I'm asking is, what does the Department of Finance say to departments where something as obvious as this happens? Are you concerned that the collection of taxes and the use of taxpayers' money in this way by departments is something that's ongoing? Do you have a role in that because of the fact that your department collects the taxes in the first place?
Not directly. I have to say, when we sat down in the second half of 2014 and into 2015 looking at our own governance framework, because the department was an organisation that was subject to a lot of turmoil, a lot of change over a period of time, and we wanted to bed down a view of our own culture and our behaviours and how we should behave. And that was a very interesting discussion across the piece, because those sorts of behaviours that you described aren't acceptable. I don't know what the cases are and so on, and even the historically held within finance, they're just not acceptable. We work for the taxpayer. Sometimes there will be litigation against the taxpayer for whatever set of reasons, but it always should be in the most courteous and understanding way possible.
But would you take it up with the department, with another department, in relation to how they spend money, where the case is?
What I was about to say, I mean, within the statement, I said that sort of the work that we had done internally, because we felt this was important, we offered as a template for the development of those sort of governance principles, those principles across the civil service, and I think it's fair to say a lot of what it features in here became the template, including those on things that departments probably haven't been good about in the past, about looking at the standards of behaviour, how you deal with people, and so on and so forth. So, yeah, I think through the Civil Service Management Board and that process, I think we brought that to the table, because we do have, surprisingly, we do have a fair amount of calls from the public around issues, particularly, for example, you have an event like the budget, you will have a lot of calls that come through the Minister's office or into taxation or whatever the changes are. And our job is to explain to people in a civil and polite way kind of what has happened. And we that, and I won't embarrass colleagues by asking about the discussion, but that was one of the most, that half page of what our behaviours, values and cultures are, was a really in-depth conversation about what it is. And I think what we have done is influence in the way the governance standards for the rest of the civil service by actually making that template available. But in terms of telling other departments or intervening, I don't have a role. But
what I'm asking is, could you not establish a role, because you are the collector of taxes, revenue, under the Department of Finance, and where you see taxes being inappropriately spent, such as chasing down citizens and, as I've said, beating them up, and where a judge has to side with the citizen and say that the department was not just wrong, that the integrity of his prosecution even came under question, and that remains unresolved. Should there not be some sort of section within a department that would take that case and look at it? Because when you talk to, not just that case now, there are others, when you speak to the department, they will say, well, the DPP or some other section decided to take the case. So you don't get an answer, and therefore you can't address the rights of the citizen. And somebody has to take it on. And I believe that if I'm paying you my taxes, and I'm sure anyone paying taxes in this country would have questions to ask as to how they're spent, and where issues like this arise, I think there's an obligation on government to protect the people it represents. And protecting them against the state itself is something that we have to take far more seriously.
Yeah, I don't disagree with any of that. I think there is an opportunity through a structure like the Civil Service Management Board, which is all the Secretariats collectively operating across, what the civil service as a single entity be in terms of service delivery and its interaction with the citizen is one way.
So who do you engage with at that level?
Well, that's all the Secretary General. It's jointly chaired by the Secretary General of the Government and the Secretary General of Public Expenditure. But I mean, it is an interesting issue, and it's probably the forum at which it can be best dealt with. But as I say,
if I had customers out there in a business that were writing descriptions of my department as that one,
I'd be very unhappy.
Yeah. So now that we've expressed unhappiness about it, can we address it? Is the question that I'm asking, because it's not fair that the state should use its muscle and taxpayers' money to come after a citizen like that. And as I've said, a judge has ruled, not just in that case but other cases, and yet there's no redress for the citizen. And the money that's due to the citizen from the state has not been paid. And what I want to know as chairman of this committee is how we can address that. As I said, you collect the taxes, and that simply, it deeply upsets me to see people like this in distress, and to see letters like that written. That are, lots of other letters are written, and you know, they're written for other reasons, but where this has been described, I think there's an onus on us to address it. So I want to know how this committee, or you, as part of the Secretaries General group, can address it.
Yeah, I think I suppose each Secretary General is responsible for their slice, you know, in law for each department. And what you're talking about is it's the behaviour across the piece, and it's certainly something that could be taken back into that sort of forum and acted upon. As I say, we have tried to. I mean, as the accounting officer for the Department of Finance, if that was an email about the department, I would not be happy, you know. I mean, you know, kind of.
Well, I want you to be unhappy that taxpayers' money is being spent in that way. I mean, if I was collecting the money and I saw someone else spending it as recklessly as that, I would challenge them. That's how a business is run. You don't just walk away, otherwise you go bust. And I would love to see someone that collects the money saying to those that are spending it recklessly and publicly spoken about in that way by a judge in that case and in other cases that I've mentioned. I would like to see them being reprimanded in some way. I'd like to see the rights of the individual being addressed. So what you're saying is that it's the Taoiseach's office that chairs that
the chair is the section of the Taoiseach, of the Department of Taoiseach. But I mean,
well,
I think
would you consider some of what I've said? And
no, I will. Sorry, no, I will. I think it's a very interesting point, and what we've tried to do is actually get that thing of values and culture and behaviours into part of how departments look at themselves.
Right. Because, for example, again, another example. I think it was before Christmas, there was a draft statutory instrument before the House on the Horse and Greyhouse Racing Fund, where they're allocating the money. And the reports that come in about that organisation and how it spends taxpayers' money just continue to come in. They've been coming in for years. And we don't seem to, as you said in your briefing, in terms of governance, like, where is the governance there? Or who implements, who polices the provision of proper governance in the context of the money that's being spent from taxpayers? Because again, it's an issue. It continues on. There are vast amounts of money involved in this. And I'm asking the Department of Finance to look at how that money is spent in terms of governance.
I mean, I think the critical thing is that each department now has to have its own governance framework, has to look at how it manages the bodies under its aegis, has to look at it. So, you know, where there are instances, I mean, a bit like this examination, I don't know anything about the Horse and Greyhound Fund. So it's if there are issues there, they have to be addressed within that context. But what we're trying to do, just into the bodies under our aegis, is to make sure that we are, to the extent that we can, and respecting their independence if they have legal independence, is to make sure that they're being operated appropriately, and we can have assurance that these sort of principles are being met.
Well, it is my intention to propose a strategy to the members here, or to investigate such issues as has been raised. And I'm flagging that for you because it's something that I'm not going to stand by and just take as being, you know, I'm unhappy about it. I think the state has to do something about it. In terms of